Hi, I'm Lindsey, and I'm talking with medtech industry leaders on how they change lives for a better world.
The inventions and technologies are fascinating, and so are the people who work with them.
There was a period of time where I realized fundamentally my job was to go hang out with really smart people that are saving lives and then do work that would help them save more lives.
I got into the business to save lives, and it is incredibly motivating to work with people who are in that same business, saving or improving lives.
What better industry than where I get to wake up every day and just save people's lives?
These are extraordinary people doing extraordinary work, and this is The Leading Difference. Hello, and welcome to the Leading Difference podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey, and I'm excited to introduce you to my guest today, Laura Yecies. Laura is the CEO of Bone Health Technologies, makers of Osteoboost, which is the first clinically proven safe and effective non-pharmacological treatment for low bone density. Osteoboost puts NASA-proven vibration in a wearable, comfortable, convenient belt form factor. Laura, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Me too. Really happy to be here.
Wonderful. I would love if you wouldn't mind starting off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and maybe what led you to the medtech industry.
Sure. My background's in business and tech primarily. I went to college on the East Coast, and after business school in 1988, I came to California. I grew up in New York, but my husband was from California, and so we decided to give it a shot out here for a little bit. And I started working in tech, doing marketing, first in enterprise software, relational databases, and developer tools. And then I moved into consumer software, started off at Netscape. And when I was at Netscape, I took on larger roles and responsibilities. I was vice president of the browser division, managing a group of over 200 engineers. And we were responsible for Netscape 6.1 and 7.0 and the Mozilla spin-out. I then led the mail team at Yahoo when we were sort of the number one email provider. And then I also worked at a tech startup and spent some time at Checkpoint, which is a large internet security company, heading up marketing there as well. And then I was CEO of two different tech startups, SugarSync, which was a sync and share company, and that's now owned by J2 Global. And then I became CEO of a small company called Catch. We had a note-taking app, and we were able to sell that company to Apple. And the Catch team became the core part of the Apple Watch team. So that was very exciting. And after that, when I was thinking about what I wanted to do next, I worked on some ideas for my own startup with some colleagues, and some things that happened in my life that really drew my attention to healthcare. And also I grew up in a family of doctors, both my parents, two of my siblings. And then at that point, my two older sons were in medicine, and I'd always been interested in that and had a bit of flexibility because of this exit, and decided that I'm going to make a pivot. And so I switched and started looking for roles in the healthcare area. And everyone sort of wanted me to work in more of the pure software side of healthcare, more of the billing and receiving and revenue cycle management and staffing and logistics. And that's interesting and important, but I found that I really wanted to work on something that had directly a health or therapeutic or diagnostic benefit for patients. And so I started consulting. I consulted with companies in the genomics field, MS, and then I was lucky to get my first CEO role at a concussion diagnostic company. And that company is now called NeuroSync, had great science. I think they went on to get an FDA clearance for diagnosing concussions. But after a couple years, the board and I had different ideas of what to do, as sometimes happens. And so I left. I spent a year consulting at Achille Interactive and at Fabric Genomics and a couple of other companies while I was looking for my next CEO role. And I was really excited to have the opportunity just over 3 years ago to join Bone Health Technologies. I knew a marketing consultant that had been there and was connected to the company. And as soon as I saw what they were trying to work on and solve and really make a dent in this issue of osteoporosis, I was interested. I mentioned that my parents were doctors. My dad had been medical director of a nursing home, and I worked a couple of summers during college as a nurse's assistant. And people seemed, my recollection was that they were in the nursing home typically for one of two reasons: Alzheimer's, or they broke their hip. And my grandmother had osteoporosis. I'm a small person. It certainly runs in my family. And so I recognized that it was an important problem, a big problem, an unsolved problem. And so my only question for the company was, does it work? We had this innovative treatment for osteoporosis, and the founders shared the data with me. It was not a sure thing, but I found the data to be very compelling. And so I joined. And we're 3 years down the line from that point in time. And one of the most important things that's happened is we finished our pivotal trial and we got the results. Now, it takes a while to do a trial for osteoporosis, but we had excellent results from the treatment.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for telling us a little bit about your background. You have such an incredibly diverse background. I have so many questions just emerged from that, but I would love to hear about your current device and the way that it works and whatnot.
Sure. So it's a wearable treatment. It's a belt that has a vibration pack that you wear over your lumbar spine, specifically at the sacrum. And so we're applying vibration to the hips and lower back. And those are two of the key areas that experience fractures from osteoporosis. So hip fractures are very life-impacting, deadly for almost 30% of people. Spine fractures, you can imagine, are very painful and debilitating. And so we're focusing vibration, which has been proven to improve bone density, on the vulnerable anatomy. And there's a body of evidence from NASA where they did whole body vibration to try to reduce bone loss for astronauts. So when astronauts spend time in space, they lose bone. And what they proved was that standing on a whole body vibration platform can improve bone density. But those companies that make these platforms, they have very good products. I'm a believer in the science, but those products haven't gone mainstream. People tend to not comply very well with them, and the good ones are expensive. And so we're aiming to take this proven science. And by the way, before NASA did the whole body vibration studies, there's a lot of studies in animals and cellular research showing the same. There's really a lot of science to support this. But our device, we aim to solve the ease of use challenge by making it something wearable. And then most importantly, the vibration is applied locally to the vulnerable anatomy. So that's what we do. And what we showed in our pivotal trial is that we reduced bone loss by over 80%. So we measured the lumbar vertebrae with a CT scan at baseline in 1 year. And the patients who were on the active treatment lost about 0.5% of their bone strength. And those on the placebo or sham treatment lost just under 3%. Our patients, we kept them clinically essentially stable and slowed this bone loss. So you don't outlive your bones.
Wow, that's incredible. I say this a lot, and I know it's used in sort of a more tongue-in-cheek manner, but for real, what a time to be alive. That is so cool how so much innovation is just constantly coming through, and there's this, people like you are doing this incredible work to bring these new devices that are really impacting patients' lives. So that sounds like incredible results. You guys must have been thrilled with those numbers.
Yes. And this was really our first attempt.
Okay.
So we had done a pilot study, but this was our first one-year study. And we just applied for a grant to do another study in basically a longer treatment duration, essentially a higher dose of vibration. So from my point of view, this is a great result, but this is like the beginning.
Yeah. Yes, which is so exciting too, because it just leaves room for so much more as you continue to go down this path. So that is exciting. And so that's your next step, I'm imagining, is this next level of treatment. And what do you envision the company to do or be doing in, say, 3-5 years from now?
So in 3 to 5 years, my goal is, first of all, that we have this device very widely used in the market or with patients. So there's 52 million patients with osteopenia, another 12 million with osteoporosis. Our trial was for patients with osteopenia. And so there are a lot of patients out there who I think would benefit from this device. We also want to start to develop a relationship with those patients, not just sell them a device, but support them in their overall bone health optimization. So we today have created an Osteoboost application. So we help patients remember and comply, and we remind them and give them encouragement to use the device. We help them get the optimum amount of calcium by tracking that, exercise, and then our vision is to add community and other elements of optimizing bone health and potentially to have other services. We never want to get in the way of a patient's relationship with their doctor. So if their personal physician is supporting their treatment of their bone density issues, that's great. But in many cases, they're not. And so we want to have services available for that as well. It's interesting, if you look in the App Store or look at a lot of startup activity, there's many companies doing these kinds of solutions for diabetes or cardiovascular disease or asthma or depression, but there's really not much out there for bone health. And yet it's really a key part of staying well and independent and living healthily, and it's such a common problem. So we're excited, that we have something unique yet very much needed, and not in a small group. It's not a rare thing. It's very common.
Yes, absolutely. And is your plan to sell directly to the consumers, or will you be going through, insurance companies, doctors, whatnot, or have you gotten that far yet?
We haven't finalized the details of that, so we're not ready to share them. But what I will say that I think we are quite certain about is, well, first of all, it is a prescription device, so there will be a doctor involved to write the prescription. And some of the details, and we will certainly have a way where the personal physician can write that prescription. We may have some other options for patients, but a doctor is involved, which is appropriate because they have a condition that puts them at a risk of fractures and other health issues. But the other thing that I am confident about is that we are going to want to appeal to patients to generate interest. We have seen tremendous inbound interest into the company with not a lot of marketing. I mean, I've done things like this podcast and I speak at conferences, but we have not spent money on advertising or things like that because the product's not on the market yet. And I hear from patients all the time. They are searching for an innovative treatment. They're searching for ways safely to slow their bone loss. I'm a member of a number of Facebook groups for osteoporosis and hear how patients talk about this. And so I believe there's tremendous interest by patients and that we want to tap into that to build the business.
Yeah, yes. And part of the reason I brought it up, the question in the first place, was exactly for that reason. I was thinking there's got to be so many people who are searching for a solution, and yours is so innovative and accessible. I'm so excited to see where it leads. That's going to be incredible. And, it really struck me. You talked about your background being heavily in marketing back in the day. Mm-hmm. And so obviously those skills are still very present today. So it's fun to see how elements of things that you've done throughout your will lead to this success in this next endeavor. And I am actually very curious also. You talked about some really amazing positions that you had, and then those led you to have these CEO roles. So I'm curious, how was that transition for you stepping into your first CEO opportunity? Was that exciting, daunting, energizing? How are you feeling in those moments?
You captured many of the feelings. So, a bit of context. So it was very, very end of 2008. And so the world from a financial markets point of view was kind of falling apart. I had led large groups. I had been a general manager, but I had not been CEO. I had never raised money before. And so I stepped into a company that had been through some trauma. They were supposed to be acquired. The acquisition plug got pulled out because of the markets collapsing. The founder had left before I got there. So the company was really in a crisis, I would say. The employees were very afraid for their jobs. We didn't have money, and the financial markets were terrible. It was really challenging to go in and stabilize things and kind of pull the team together and then build the business in a challenging environment. Existing investors gave us some runway, but it was limited. They had already kind of been investing quite a while, and so I had to find outside money, which in 2009 was challenging. But it was exciting. I loved the product that I was working on. I had been a user of it. It was something that was in my wheelhouse of, I had worked quite a bit on productivity tools for workers and business people and consumers. We had great technology. So it was exciting, but it was intense. But we built that business. When I joined, we had essentially zero revenue, and we got to essentially in the 20 million run rate in 4 years.
Wow.
That was great.
Yes, that is great. That is kudos to you and your leadership for being able to step into such a challenging situation and turn it around. Yeah.
Well, one thing I learned then, because we did have all these challenges, but we also had a market where the latent demand and need was growing. It was a rising tide. And just to be specific a bit, and then I'm going to give an analogy to bone health technologies. So at that time, we had a sync and share solution. We were a little bit more niche, but you could think of it as it was quite similar to a Dropbox or a what was then Box.net. And that was also the time that iPhone sales, laptop, netbook sales were growing very, very quickly. And so the need to get your data into the cloud was, you could argue that it was always useful to be able to access your data remotely. And there were always kind of some niche solutions like Go to My PC. But suddenly, because the environment was changing where people were having these devices, the market demand and the market opportunity was growing. Okay. So fast forward, 13 years, and osteoporosis and osteopenia is growing. But the other thing that's growing is awareness. And our target demographic, postmenopausal women, I'd say our typical patients are in their 60s. I don't know, what's the joke? 60s is the new 50s or the new 40s. Like, these are women who want to stay active, right? They may be still working. If they're not working, they're very involved in the community. They're very involved with their family. They may be at a point where they've educated their children, they've saved some money, so they have disposable income that they want to take care of their health. And so it's a demographic that spends money on their health. They also are very social and community-minded. Now let's imagine a 6-year-old woman with osteopenia, and she's going on a hike or a walk with her girlfriends. Well, what are the chances that her female friends also have osteopenia? That's probably 80%, right?
Yeah,
if they're similar in age. And so I see this set of patients and who we're going after as being very interested in safe, non-pharmacological solutions that are easy to access. You can call it the Amazon effect. They're used to things being convenient and seamless. And they want this type of solution to help them stay kind of active and healthy and be, in a way, preventative of the need for medication. So I see this as in a very different way than sugar sync, still a rising tide market. And oh, by the way, at the same time, talking health concerns related to menopause is suddenly, and as it should be, not just socially acceptable, it's a hot topic, right? Oprah, Michelle Obama, Gwyneth Paltrow, they're all talking about menopause symptoms. And by the way, osteopenia is very much a result of menopause. You're losing bone density slowly, typically starting your 30s, but in the 5 years after menopause, there's rapid bone loss, and that's typically when women get into that osteopenia stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and by the way, the women who are in their 60s today, when they were going through menopause 10 years ago, or 12 years ago, or 15 years ago, they were told no hormone replacement therapy
Right.
unless you're completely miserable because of findings in the Women's Health Initiative. And that pendulum has now swung back to a more moderate position. But today's 60-somethings are less likely to be on HRT or to have even been on HRT, so they're more likely to have bone loss.
Yeah. And, speaking of this, and you were talking about, thankfully, there's much more awareness, there's much more conversation happening about women and menopause and going through symptoms and whatnot. I've just been reading lately how much it is still a struggle, despite that, for women founders, especially of medtech companies, to get the funding that they need. And I'm curious, what was your experience when you were fundraising? What were your challenges? What were your triumphs? And maybe even suggestions for other women founders who are going to be going through this soon too?
There's no controlled experiments on these questions, right? So if my fundraise on a difficulty from 0 to 10 was a 7, right? Would it have been easier or harder if I were a man? I really don't know. I do know that there's less funding going to women, but I have felt that, at least for this company, I don't have any reason to assume that to be the case. If anything, I believe that investors, many of them, they even talk about this, they're looking for founder product or founder market fit. And I'm not the founder of the company. I was brought in as CEO after it started, but I feel like a founder. I operate that way. This is my adopted child, and I love it no less than if
of course.
If I gave birth to it. And
Right.
I am a user of our product, right? And I empathize with very deeply and connect with our patients. And I think if a 25-year-old man were sitting in my shoes trying to raise money, maybe he would have even had a harder time. So I know. I don't know. Women's health has been underinvested in. I believe it still is underinvested in. And why is that? It's very hard to tell. I will also say that devices are a harder field to raise money for, independent of gender.
Sure.
There's more investors investing in digital solutions or pharma than devices for a variety of reasons. The size of the device investor market has shrunk. And I think that's unfortunate. And because I think there are a lot of solutions that are less invasive, less systemically invasive. Osteoporosis or osteopenia is one example, but we see devices for other women's health areas like pelvic prolapse or stress urinary incontinence or a number of things that are of concern to women, but also things that affect everyone like migraine. And these device solutions are very safe. They don't completely replace pharmacological solutions, but I think it's really important to have other options. And so I do think it has been challenging, especially in the early stages in that field.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but I thank you for your perspective too. It is, I think, quite refreshing to hear from somebody who was a woman who went through this raising capital and actually did have a really good experience, because you hear so many of the opposite. So sometimes it's easy to go, oh gosh, it's not changing fast enough. But it is so encouraging to hear from somebody who has had a really good experience. So I appreciate your telling me about that.
Yeah. And for women's health, if most of the investors are men, a good investor should be able to appreciate concerns outside of their personal experience. But I think human nature is such that we tend to connect with problems that we've had. And so the fact that most of the VCs and investors are men makes the whole women's health field, I think, more challenging for fundraising. But we'll see, that's changing too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what are some things that you are excited about, either personally or professionally, in the coming Oh, coming couple of years, what's gonna get you up and ready to just tackle the day?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, that most of my career I've spent more on the commercial and marketing and sales side. And since I've been at BHT, we've been very much in sort of science and research mode, which has been very interesting, fascinating. I've enjoyed it, but I'm really looking forward to this next phase where we can get the product on the market. I mean, I hear from patients multiple times per week, when is this going to be available? And I don't like saying it's not available today.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to say today, and that feels tantalizingly close. I'm very much looking forward to that. And first doing it at a small scale, we have a waiting list of patients, and I want to, kind of put a shout out on that. We will first go to the waiting list to make the product available, and people can sign up at bonehealthtech.com. And the front of the line are the patients the citizen scientists who participated in our pivotal trial, and we have another trial going. They're first in line. They have contributed so much and did it really out of a total generosity of spirit. They had minimal compensation. And then, of course, to get to the next level of hitting the gas and growing the availability and distribution of the product, I'm imagining, I talked about hiking before, and that's because I love to hike. And I'm imagining Osteoboosting hiking groups or something like that. I know that sounded corny, but...
Oh, I love it. No, it's fun. And that is so exciting. I'm really cheering you on as this next phase comes to reality.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's incredible. Pivoting just for fun, imagine you were to be offered an opportunity to teach a masterclass on any subject you want. It doesn't have to be in your industry, but it can be. And you'd get $1 million for doing so. What would you choose to teach and why?
I think I would want to teach around marketing and commercialization, sort of product management, and then really the full life cycle of bringing products to market. I've been doing it for 35 years, I hate to say. That sounds like a long time. In various formats. I mean, some of it has leaned heavily on the digital marketing. Some of it has been more B2B sales, business development. So I feel like I've spent a lot of time in that area, and I have lessons learned to share. I actually enjoy teaching. I spent some time when I first came out to the Bay Area. I taught marketing at Santa Clara Business School. I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed working in the marketing field more. And I had young kids, and so between a full-time job and kids, there wasn't also time for teaching. But I would love to get back and do more teaching. And I do executive coaching, and I informally coach, and that's a very rewarding part of my job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that sounds like a great masterclass and very needed. So we would sign up for that one.
Thank you.
And how do you wish to be remembered after you leave this world?
Oh, I mean, I'm a family first person, and I am lucky to have a great husband, 4 kids, and today 6 grandchildren. And the first thing that goes through my mind when you ask that question is to have had just a really positive impact on them and the other family members and friends in my life. And then, work, if this device or our solution is effective, it provokes small changes, but in our field, small changes over time can have big results. And if we've prevented fracture and helped people, I would be really, really honored to be able to be known for that.
Yes, of course. And final question. What is one thing that makes you smile every time you see or think about it?
My grandchildren. Getting to play with them when they come through the door every Friday.
Oh,
We have a family dinner almost every Friday night, and I look forward to it all week. And when they walk through the door, so that's my mental image, and I for sure smile with that one.
oh, I love that. What a great tradition. And it's so lovely that all your family is, or at least some of your family is close enough to be able to do that. How fun.
Yes, it's really fun. And I grew up with that, so I'm trying to continue it with the next generation.
Yeah, yes, that's fantastic. Laura, thank you so much for joining us and sharing about yourself, your background, and the incredible work that you and your company are doing. I'm so excited to see it come to market and just really impact lives. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Oh, my pleasure. And thanks for the chance to share it with people and for inviting me onto your show.
Of course. And we're so honored to be making a donation on your behalf as a thank you for your time today to the Equal Justice Initiative, which provides legal representation to prisoners who may have been wrongfully convicted of crimes, poor prisoners without effective representation, and others who may have been denied a fair trial. So thank you so much for choosing that charity to support. And we just wish you continued success as you work to change lives for a better world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you also to our listeners for tuning in. And if you're feeling as inspired as I am right now, I'd love it if you'd share this episode with a colleague or two. And we will catch you next time.
The Leading Difference is brought to you by Velentium. Velentium is a full-service CDMO with 100% in-house capability to design, develop, and manufacture medical devices from Class 2 wearables to Class 3 active implantable medical devices. Velentium specializes in active implantables, leads, programmers, and accessories across a wide range of indications, such as neuromodulation, deep brain stimulation, cardiac management, and diabetes management. Velentium's core competencies include electrical, firmware, and mechanical design, mobile apps, embedded cybersecurity, human factors and usability, automated test systems, systems engineering, and contract manufacturing. Velentium works with clients worldwide, from startups seeking funding to established Fortune 100 companies. Visit Velentium.com to explore your next step in medical device development.